Deputy Presiding Officer, you already know that I think very highly of our Minister for Independence. I think he's destined for many greater things in the world. But I didn't think he was this cunning. Jamie Hepburn has clearly a new strategy for achieving independence. Paper after paper, relentlessly produced, week after week, in boring, soporific detail, he's trying to bore us into submission. Just when is it all going to end? Just like the others, I haven't read this paper, and I can imagine what's in it. Full of grand assertion of just how brilliant the SNP and Greens have been on the international stage. But let's look at the actual record. China. Nicola Sturgeon personally signed a deal with the China Railway No. 3 Engineering Group, called CR3, during a meeting at Butte House. No due diligence was done, and it was discovered that CR3 had been blacklisted by the Norwegian State Pension Fund for gross corruption and were found by Amnesty International to have connections to human rights abuses. China company Sino-Fortone were also signatories on the same £10 billion deal, later described as all bollocks by the chief fixer after it was revealed they only
Mr Rennie, even if you're quoting, and I've made this clear before, could you please resume your seat? I would expect members to use language that is fitting for the parliamentary chamber. That was not fitting the parliamentary chamber. Mr Rennie.
I'm sorry, Deputy Presiding Officer, and I'm sure my mother would not be impressed either with that, but I was simply quoting what was... Can I finish this point? Sorry. So I will withdraw those remarks, and I apologise for that. But those comments were made by the chief fixer after it was revealed they only owned a pub in the middle of the Cotswolds. In 2022, it was uncovered that at least 49 public bodies in Scotland were still unaware of the Scottish Government's human rights tests introduced following those deals. The Scottish Government continues to this day to use Chinese surveillance cameras a year after pledging to remove them over security concerns. First Minister Alex Salmond kowtowed to China by refusing to meet the Dalai Lama during his visit to Scotland, personally assuring the Chinese ambassador that it had nothing to do with him. Both he and Nicola Sturgeon thought by making a few speeches in China about Adam Smith would wash away all the human rights concerns. And Alex Salmond thinks we've forgotten about the tartan trews. On a trip to China, he got a poor, downtrodden official to buy him a pair of tartan trews because he'd left his own at home. And then he tried to claim those tartan trousers on expenses and cover it up from the taxpayer. But then Alex Salmond does like strong leaders. Back in 2014, in the wake of the Russian invasion of Crimea, he said he had a certain admiration for Vladimir Putin, saying his restoring Russian pride must surely be a good thing. Did Humza Yousaf or Nicola Sturgeon or any of the ministers, any of the members of this Parliament at that time criticise this outrageous statement? Not a chance that was going to happen. Let's say it's wished for independence, I suspect. Alex Salmond later hosted a long-running TV show on the Kremlin propaganda channel Russia Today. And more recently, he agreed to front a new television show on Turkish channel TRT, described by critics as a propaganda arm of the Turkish regime. The current First Minister, for now, Humza Yousaf, has been flirting with the Turkish regime as well. He courted President Erdogan, inviting him to Scotland, despite concerns from including in his own party about civil liberties and human rights abuses. In 2013, let's not forget, as International Development Minister, Humza Yousaf visited Qatar, but failed to raise the case of an imprisoned poet, Mohammed al-Jahami, despite visiting a poetry festival in the region on the very same visit. The hypocrisy continues. An SNP minister held an unrecorded dinner with disgraced Australian financier Lex Greensill, amid financial deals that have exposed taxpayers to the tune of hundreds of millions of pounds. They've dodged questions about whether government-owned Prestwick Airport was once used for US rendition flights, the subject of a 10-year investigation. The SNP wants an independent Scotland to have the protection of the nuclear alliance NATO while rejecting nuclear weapons. They are still breaching, not just now, sorry, they are still breaching international minimum standards on the age of criminal responsibility. And don't forget the Greens. In 2015, they passed a motion at their conference calling for Hamas to be taken off the international terrorist list. How outrageous that was. Despite this record, the Scottish Government, with all the pomposity they could muster, pledged to create a peace institute. The Peace Institute would utilise all their incredible talent and credibility to bring peace across the world. This was before cancelling the whole project because they'd run out of money. Whether it has been duped by China, ignoring the jailed poet in Qatar, standing by whilst Alex Salmond praised Putin, flirting with Erdogan, or the Greens previously stating they had backing to remove Hamas from the terrorist list, what a shower they are, parading as saints on the world stage, but clueless, bumbling, and a little bit more than grubby. They are an embarrassment to Scotland, but none of that will be included in this paper, that is for sure.